Welcome to the Digital Marketing Insights podcast, brought to you by Brightside Digital.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. Today I'm delighted to say we have Aditya with us, who's a digital insights and marketing strategist. Aditya, how are you doing?
Hey Tom, how are you? I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Excited to speak to you. Really excited to just basically tell you the story and what I've been up to. I'm glad that you invited me and good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on, buddy. So Aditya, let's start off the same as always. Can you tell us all a little bit about yourself, please?
Perfect. My experience, Tom, might be slightly bit different to some of the guests you've had before on the show, but again, pretty much in the same industry as some of them. I come from Mumbai, India. That's where I essentially started my career. I have a very strong, social media agency experience. I have worked across content, creation, tech, ad serving, some of the typical backgrounds that that a typical digital marketing exec would have. Uh, but yeah, so it started off, I would say, 10 years, I would say, before this year. I've again worked across social media. I've worked across typical agencies. And yeah, I was working in Mumbai for close to 5 years. And I realized that I needed to kind of like give a stamp on what I was doing, if you know what I mean. Because again, digital marketing, as you would note yourself, can become very vague very quickly. It's such a vast field. So after working in a digital marketing agency environment, I realized that I wanted to firstly get a stamp of approval on digital marketing per se. And then secondly, I wanted to always come out of India and do my masters and pursue my masters. So I found a very good course, a digital marketing masters in UCD Smurfit. So that happened 5 years ago now. So that kind of like brought me to Ireland. I finished my masters. I was interning throughout my masters. I worked for a programmatic agency while I was doing my masters over here. I worked for a fintech company as well while I was doing my masters. And since then, I've been working for Channel Site as a client performance lead. Again, Channel Site is not like your typical ad agency, if I can put it like that. We are a e-commerce SaaS martech tool, digital shelf analytics and buy now analytics, and some of the more wider e-commerce space, if I can say that. uh, but like again, what I've tried to do at Channel Side is essentially connect my agency experience, some of my branding experience, some of the martech experience that I have, to this very technical tool that is e-commerce. So although e-commerce is a SaaS tech kind of a tool, it sits within the marketing ecosystems, e-commerce ecosystems of some of the biggest brands out there. So what I was able to come in and provide was that sync between how to talk the lingo, how to talk the agency lingo or a performance lingo, and connect that to some of the clients that we work with. And yeah, since I've been working with Transit for the last 5 years, it's been a great journey. Have kind of like embedded myself into that e-commerce sphere now, and have been lucky to work with some of the biggest brands out there.
Brilliant. And what would you see as your biggest strength in digital at the moment?
I would say some of the biggest, like one of my biggest trends, if you call me personally, is that finding what a client is needed. So the cliche, right? Like start with the objective and work towards, work backwards, right? I would say, one of the biggest trends that I think I bring to the table is my ability to just connect the dots, right? I think KPIs, tactics, they're all very important, but finding that, what is that one, how is the last part, right? It's the why that matters, as we all say. So I think I'm able to connect the dots between that why to the how, y- you know and that strategic thinking, I would say, are some of my strong points. Again, backed that by some of the numbers. I think I'm a bit analytics and insights driven. So understanding the insights, reading through the data, and then interpreting what the data is telling me, I would say, would be some of the biggest strengths, if I can call it simply that.
Yeah. Yeah, really well said. And can you give me a really good example recently of how you've applied that to a campaign or some of your work?
Absolutely. Again, I think one of the biggest shifts that happened, Tom, on the back of the pandemic and the lockdowns, right, was the big push towards e-commerce, right? Um, and again, some of these pushes were led by the fact that people were spending more time at home, right? They were doing some of the grocery shopping, as we all did, right? Subscriptions, Netflix, your OTT platform subscriptions went up. So anything really that you know that got people sitting at home and spending time better, right? uh, One of the examples that I can think of was one of our clients recently. um, they were again, on the back of some of the successes that they saw on online and e-commerce sales. uh, they had a plan to launch a direct shop. So right, one of the trends that we saw again over the last 1 year was brands kind of like moving towards a direct to consumer route, on the
Yeah,
back of some of the successes that they saw during the pandemic, without realizing the fact that D2C works, right, but it might not work for everyone. What I mean by that now is, for example, if it's a laptop brand or if it's a headphone brand, as an example, people won't mind buying directly that from, let's say, a brand's website. But for example, if it's FMCG good, right, if it's a if it's a cola, right, or a carton of milk, right, and that kind of like becomes part of a bigger basket, right, that a consumer would maybe shop weekly or monthly even, right. So having a direct to consumer strategy for these type of items is kind of like a bit hard, right. um, and that has started to become a bit of a reality check for some of the brands, right. Some of the D2C activities that were built on back of the e-commerce successes that were seen during the pandemic or during the lockdowns, right, although they were great, they might not have been a real reflection of what the buying patterns were for people. Again, an example I can think of is a similar client that I was working on. They are a very big FMCG brand globally, right? Um, and on the back of some of the successes that they saw across e-commerce, they kind of like decided to go full on D2C, right, without focusing on some of the key partners that they were working with. So for example, the Tesco's, the Don's, the the Aldi's of the worlds, where they would potentially sell, maybe not Aldi so much, but Tesco, Super Value, and a typical retail where a brand would be selling.
yeah,
And again, within a month or two, they realized that the sales weren't that much. When they compared the direct to consumer sales to some of the channel marketing sales that they were getting. So again, just a quick of a just a quick bit of an example there to kind of like identify even within e-commerce, right, what are some of the channel tactics going to be like for a brand, what are some of the some of the partnership related tactics that a brand would still want to have with the retailers and so on. And again, we have seen this trend as a pattern, right? Brands wanting to go direct, especially the FMCG ones, right? Wanting to go direct now, coming back to the original, e-commerce sales via the partners route, because again, numbers, volumes do come from a Tesco, numbers and volumes do come from a Super Value, right? So you can't basically juggle, you can't basically ignore a channel for direct to consumer as a strategy, right? You have to keep that balance out. And again, some of the examples again that we are seeing now are kind of like brands coming back to this balanced approach versus singularly D2C, if I can put it like that.
brilliant. Yeah, and like, what kind of softwares and how do you report a lot of this work that you do?
Absolutely. So at channel side, and again, some of the softwares that I tend to be working on would be on the lines of Power BI, Tableau, right?
Yeah,
But at the same time, again, the basics, like the classics, right? Google Analytics would be some of my strong points as well. Facebook ad managers. So again, it's really a mix of a lot of insights, driven softwares like Tableau or Power BI or Looker. Data analytics. That's one of the most recent softwares that I've kind of like had my hands on. But then again, Google Analytics would be a very key software that we'd be using generally on a daily basis, along with Facebook Analytics as well.
brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, and can you explain a little bit more about Tableau for any listeners of how you can integrate that into your platform and pull in your analytics that way?
Absolutely. So Tableau, for those who don't know about it, it was a data visualization software mainly. So solutions like channel side, who would have their own data sets, right, would generally use a solution like Tableau to essentially build their reporting portals on, right. That would be one of the use cases. And another use case would be if you have fragmented data sets, if you have, let's say, data coming in from different sources, like Facebook Analytics would be a source. If you have some independent media companies or media agencies sending you some sort of independent data sets, that could be a data source. So essentially it's also a singular source wherein if you need to combine different data sets and essentially come up with your own visualizations, Tableau, a software like Tableau would be a go-to. A more easier version or a more less extensive version of Tableau would be Power BI. So Power BI is a Microsoft tool wherein again you could essentially do something similar, wherein if you have your ad reports from Facebook combined with, let's say, your Twitter spends from Twitter, combined with Google Analytics trends that you've seen for the month. So a solution like Tableau or a solution like Power BI would essentially help you combine some of these data sources so that you have a more richer, holistic viewpoint or a report to view on, without having to go to, let's say, 10 places to get those insights from.
Yeah, really well said. And looking at yourself for a second, Aditya, is there any areas you're looking to upskill into right now and why?
Absolutely. I would say again, as I said at the start of the interview podcast, right? Like digital marketing is it's so vast, right? There's only so much you can learn. But with that being said, again, insights, and there's a massive difference between insights and data, Tom, right? I think insights is where a lot of my credibility and a lot of my experience comes from. But then at the same time, I still think that if I'm able to get more closer to the data side of things, right, so the more get the hands dirty with with getting lost in the numbers and excels and that sort of things, right, I would say that's definitely one thing that I need to upskill myself on, is just hardcore data and learning the basics of SQL and Excel at scale, if I can say that, right. But then at the same time, uh, kind of like getting to know what goes into building the visualization and the insights and the trends that we generally like to uh, rave about and talk about, right. I would say those are the two skills that I definitely want to upskill myself on, like just getting more close to the actual data and backend side of things, getting to upskill myself in the SQL,
Yeah.
if I can say that, and then definitely getting a bit better with Excel, if I can say that, would be the two aims that I have for me for this year.
Yeah, really well said. And looking at the digital industry as a whole, is there anything that really excites you that you think is coming that might benefit you or your company or something in the future?
Absolutely. I would say again, for those for the listeners that are not very close to the e-commerce world, right? I would say uh, definitely a lot has happened in the last 2 years, right? And if you ask me what are two or three trends that pop out, I would say retail media is definitely an area that's picking up now, right? When I say retail media, it's basically Amazon opening up its ad platform to everyone and anyone to use, right? Like again, I think the last report I read, like I think Amazon is I think the third biggest ad network now, after Google and Facebook, right? That's a big jump. uh, Amazon ads, were very niche until 2 years, and all of a sudden, it's taken a center stage. So retail media of any kind, not just Amazon, but you know, biggest retailers of the world, is kind of like opening up their back doors for retail ads. I would say it's definitely one trend that I'm personally following myself. Uh, and again, shoppable ads is the second one. So again, the ability to buy something right of Facebook, right, or the ability to buy something right of Pinterest, right. um, I would say these are the two trends that I'm personally following. Again, shoppable media has kind of picked up over the last 2 years, wherein Facebook has introduced new features themselves. So Facebook Shop is a new feature. Twitter Shop, on the back of Facebook, Twitter have done some updates to their e-commerce offerings as well. Snapchat itself is offering a VR shoppable ad version themselves. So there's a lot of stuff happening across shoppable media as well over the last 2 years. And yeah, particularly excited about retail media and shoppable media, or social commerce, whatever you want to call it. Personally, myself, and as as an industry, reader from an e-commerce standpoint.
Yeah, really well said. And Aditya, we always ask the same question on the show, which is our final question on the show, which is if you could bottle up one personality trait that you have yourself that you could pass on to others, what would it be?
I would say just the fact that the industry that we are in, right? Irrespective of what sector or what genre you're working in, be that content, be that media spends, media planning. I would say the one character that I've personally developed over the years for myself is curiosity. So always be curious about where the industry is going, right? Although you'd be doing the job on a daily basis, although you'd be excelling at it, if you can't think two steps further than your peers, then I think that just stops the growth. So I think being curious about what the trends are, what is that something, what's that next thing that you need to be upskilled on, right? uh, I would say definitely curiosity, and I would say and then secondly, humbleness. If you aren't able to communicate your KPIs, your insights internally, right? uh, in a more humble sense, you wouldn't be able to do that externally to your clients, right? So I would say be curious, be humble, right, about what you've been up to and what you're doing on a daily basis. And yeah, always be curious as to know where the industry is going, so that you're always two steps ahead of some of the other peers that you're working with.
Really well said. And what a lovely way to end the show, Aditya. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I've loved every minute of it. And yeah, I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thanks very much, Swami. Thanks for having me over. I hope it was nice here for some of the listeners. And yeah, you can definitely feel free to reach out to me on any of the social platforms. I'm very active there. And yeah, I'm happy to stay in touch, Tom, as as I've been with you, and looking forward to our next interview podcast, whatever it is.